Round two.
And now I'm going to mute it.
Hi,
Hello.
how are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. Just, living the COVID working from home dream.
I know I'm in the office today. It's exciting. Change of scenery.
Right? Yeah. Anytime there's a change of scenery, I feel like it's like a big thing these days.
It's crazy. Who do we have on the line at 238-93?
This is Mayor Dennis Carpenter.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There. That way it can't accidentally get.
Jessica, Jess B, can you hear me?
Yes.
I had a call about 30 minutes ago from Mayor Dennis Carpenter of Rama, and he's calling in phone only.
Okay, he's on the line now, so we got him.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Slinger.
And 5 is a quorum.
1, 2, 3, 4. Almost there. Hey, Bev, did you want to send me financials to pull up?
Oh, sorry. They are not available. We haven't received the information yet.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure I didn't miss it.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Got your quorum, it looks like. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You want me to leave this on or turn it off?
This is Wayne. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, then I call to order the July 8th PPRTA Board of Directors meeting. Item 1, call to order, establish a quorum. We do have a quorum. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Everyone reviewed the agenda or have any changes?
Yolanda, move to approve the agenda.
This is Wayne. I'll second.
Okay, have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that passes. Item 3, public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments from anybody? Do we have a system set up? I know we did last time and no call-ins, but do we have a system for us to go forward?
We received no public comment by email.
Okay, and there's no call-in?
No.
Okay. Item 4, approval of the minutes from June 10th, 2020 special meeting. Have everybody reviewed the minutes?
Yolanda, move to approve.
Wayne seconds.
Okay, any comments? That was real fast. Not hearing any, so I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Hearing none, that passes. Item 5, Citizen Advisory Committee Monthly Report. Jimmy there?
Reb's going to give it, being as he ran the meeting.
Oh, okay. Rep? Reb, you there? Jim, you sure he really wanted to run that?
Yeah, he was struggling getting on. I don't have the CAC agenda right in front of me, but from the pre-report, the contracts presented by the city and the county were recommended for approval, and there were no other issues that required board approval, is my recollection.
With one addition, the 2020 mid-year budget amendment. The CAC recommended approval of the budget amendment.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments for the monthly report? Okay, hearing none, we do have to accept the monthly report.
It's Wayne, so moved.
Second.
This is Carpenter. Okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve, I'm sorry, to accept the CAC monthly report. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, that passes. Item 6, financial reports. Do we have any good news, Bev? Good news, Bev? Great news, Bev?
Good afternoon.
Good news, Bev?
Good afternoon. We do not have the information yet, but as soon as it's available, I'll put together the financials and send them out via email. This month is a little early, this meeting, and we also had a holiday in there, July 4th. So that is probably why the information has not come down from the state yet.
Okay, any questions for Bev on that, although it's no news? All right, hearing none on that, what do we have next, Bev?
Okay, we have the 2020 budget amendment, and today is the budget workshop, and the Citizen Advisory Committee approved a positive recommendation for this budget to the board, although that's not really necessary for today, but I'd like to do a brief overview of the budget, and I'd like the board to set the public hearing date for August 12th at 1:30. So in the budget packet on page 1, I outline the revenue over budget from 2019 that's being carried over in this budget amendment. That's primarily what's happening to change the annual budget. We're not increasing sales and use tax for the year. So for net sales and use taxes, we're 11.8 million over budget last year. And interest earnings were almost 2.6 million for a total of 14.4 million over budget. And transit revenue was down slightly by 50,000 compared to budget last year. And the administrative expenses were below budget by almost 247,000, and that will be carried over in the 2020 budget to be used later for estimating costs of future projects for the PPRTA extension. Now, for capital, 55%, 7.9 million of that would be allocated to capital, of which 6,386,000 is for CDOT's payment for the I-25 extension, I-25 gap project. So we have fulfilled, after we sent them this check, we have fulfilled our obligation for that. Maintenance receives 5 million, a little more than 5 million, and transit receives 1,442,000 additional revenue. And then the allocations that follow below there are just to the different member governments by their, based on their decennial census percentage. So I don't know if anyone has any questions for me or for member government staff. But this is just the brief overview. And if you'd like more information, I can surely give it to you.
Any questions for Bev on this? Or on any aspect of this?
Chair Gonzalez,
Yes, Yolanda.
just a comment. I think it's wonderful that we've been able to fill our obligation on the gap, and that will be behind us.
It does feel good.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, and I think we need to, on this, we have to set a meeting to approve anything, just a motion to.
Set the public hearing for next month, and then I'll notice it in the paper, and then you can approve the budget next month.
Okay, so what we need is a motion to set the public meeting for the budget for 12 August at 1:30.
Holly Williams, so moved.
Yolanda, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to set that public meeting. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that passes unanimously. Great. And I think you still have one more item, 6C.
So I would like to request a 1-year extension of the audit contract. I talked to Kyle after asking the board if it would be a possibility last month, and he gave me a quote of 8,000 for the annual audit, and that is the same that we've been paying for the last 3 years. And because of COVID and his institutional knowledge that he has and his staff have of the PPRTA, it would reduce the amount of on-site audit necessary, so that it would be a little bit safer to utilize Kyle's firm for another year.
We did bring this up last week, last month in terms of, how difficult it might be for a company that hasn't been working with us to come in and try to do all this remotely and distant, potentially for the duration potentially based on what could happen. So any discussion or concerns or support for that?
Commissioner Gonzalez, this is Mr. Geisler. Can I make one comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to reiterate, and yes, we did discuss this last month. I'm the one who brought up the issue last year about changing auditors, but I recognize, as Beverly says, that the signs of the times have changed because of COVID, and because of COVID, this makes a lot of sense. So with that, I would be moving, if we have to approve, I would be moving approval of this extension of this contract for 1 year.
Okay, any other comments or a second?
Commissioner
Second.
Williams,
Oh, Holly, or Commissioner Williams?
Commissioner Williams, second.
Okay, and who else tried to jump in there? Was that for a comment or for the second? Thought I heard somebody else trying to get on. Okay, maybe.
Oh, this is Yolanda. I was going to second, but Commissioner Williams did it.
I beat her to
Holly.
it.
Right, spreading the wealth. Good. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to accept the 1 year extension on the audit contract. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. And that passes unanimously. Okay, so we are finished with item 6. We're going to item 7, 2020 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Start off with 7A, City of Colorado Springs. I don't know if we have Mike here.
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Right. Yep.
Okay. All right. The first item we have is for operations and maintenance. It's for a contract for marker or geospatial for pavement condition assessment. And there's some RTA funding, and then there's a little bit of funding from some of the other entities who are going to use the service. That's something for operations. So if there's any questions on this one, I'll have to have Corey answer it. Okay, no questions there. The next item is a change order for Aecom for the Black Forest Widening project. We're adding right-of-way and property acquisition services. They'll be using TRS as a subcontractor. We have about 20 properties we'll need easements or right-of-way from, so we need the services to create legal descriptions and also to negotiate some of the acquisitions. And so that's what this change order will cover. Next item for the emergency bridge, from the emergency bridge fund, we're going to use some of that to supplement the Verde Bridge replacement that's going on. The memo has a list of some additional costs that we've incurred, and there's also some participation from CSU for some of their work for $31,000. And the last one is for final design of the Galley Road Bridge over the West Fork of Sand Creek to Stantec. They've done some preliminary work, and then this will do the final design of that project.
Hey, great. Any questions? Hearing none, would anybody like to motion to approve these?
This is
Yolanda, move to
Geisler.
approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have Yolanda motioning and Dave to second. Do we, all in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 Any opposed say nay? All right, that passes unanimously. Item 7B, El Paso County. Do we have Jennifer?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, other PPRTA Board of Director members. Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County, County Engineer. we have one item for your consideration today. This is on our Highway 105 project. And as you know, we've split our Highway 105 project into two phases. Phase A, which we are working on hopefully getting out to contract here in the next 6 months. But what we're talking about is a change order related mostly to Phase B, which we are in final design on. Phase B is from Lake Woodmore Drive all the way out to State Highway 83. And we're asking for a change order to support an updated traffic study. And that is for recognizing that we've had some significant changes in this portion of the corridor with some growth, and also a new school out on the other side of State Highway 83, which we believe has some impacts. So we want to make sure that as we're moving on final design here, that we are making sure that we have all the correct improvements and have an updated traffic study. The other item is that since we did the preliminary design and entered into our contract with the final design for this project, the county has changed its stormwater quality regulations. And so we are making sure that we're adding in some additional money, because that takes a little bit additional work to make sure that we address those properly. So that's what this contract is for, is to support our final design effort on Phase B of Highway 105.
Hey, any questions for Jen? Okay, get a motion to approve the El Paso County contracts.
Commissioner Williams, I move approval.
Carpenter seconds it.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes unanimously as well. And now we're on to item 8, other reports. City of Colorado Springs Transit Services monthly update. Who do we have for the city?
Mr. Chair, Craig Blewett here with Mountain Metro. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, please proceed.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon. Craig Blewett, Director of Mountain Metro Transit with City of Colorado Springs. Our report is in your packet. Our ridership continues to be down due to the COVID pandemic and reduced community travel. Our local bus service was down 54% compared to the same month last year. Our ADA paratransit similarly was down even more, down 79% compared to May of 2019. Our taxi choice option has been suspended, so there were no rides in the month of May. All of those ride requests were met by our Metro Mobility ADA paratransit service. And van pool program was down also 91% compared to May of last year. People are not commuting to Denver. They're working from home for the most part. But we did add another van compared to the report. The report says we got up to 7 vans. We're now up to 8 vans since that report was issued. Also, just want to let you know we've done projections for ridership for all of 2020, and these projections are based on some assumptions in terms of what's going to happen going forward, and those assumptions can change. But for fixed route, we're looking for all of 2020 to be down about 42%, and on ADA down 45%. Now we've been down more than that on ADA, and so that ridership key there is going to be if and when the group adult day programs resume. 46% of all of our ADA trips are going to those adult day programs during normal times. And so that's like Goodwill and some of the other programs. And once they open up, we expect our ridership to jump considerably. A question, of course, is whether they'll be able to resume at full strength or some reduced level. But they're also, we've asked them to give us advance notice when they're going to reopen to make sure that we're ready for those additional rides. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Commissioner Gonzalez, this is Mr. Geislinger.
Yep, go ahead.
Craig, we have heard in various from various sources that CARES Act is going to provide a large amount to transportation, or at least potentially to Mountain Metro. Where are we on finalizing the amount that we're going to receive, and what's going to be done with that?
Sure. So we have that number has been finalized. It's $21.6 million or so, but we have a specific number. We did submit our proposed use to the Federal Transit Administration, and that was reviewed and approved. So it's a reimbursement type situation. It comes through the same type of grants that we get on an annual basis, so our 5307 grant, and basically the same rules for spending it, so we can spend it on operations and so forth. We have provided information to the city's budget office on our proposal, and much of it is going, some is spent on additional costs resulting from cleaning buses and masks and so forth. But a lot of it is going to be used to defray our, loss of revenue from fare revenue as well as sales tax, whether from PPRTA or city or other impacts to our revenue. So that's really where the bulk of the funding is going to go, is to make sure that we can sustain our current services for the foreseeable future.
And that's what I wanted in terms of clarity, because there was, when the numbers were first suggested, there was this idea that we could use this money to go to additional services or make an expansion of services. But it sounds like most of this is actually going to be necessary to maintain the services that were provided before COVID, so that those services can be started again once, or continued throughout this pandemic until we get ridership and revenue restored to a somewhat more consistent basis.
Yeah, that's correct. And to be honest with you, we are being cautious. We're being conservative. No one knows how long this is going to go. And as long as it continues, I think, how reluctant are people going to be to, ride the bus until it's under control. So we're being conservative. I think a question was asked at a previous meeting, and you may not have been there, Councilmember Geislinger, but at the end, if there are funds left over that we haven't had to use to, offset lost revenue, we would take it through the regular budget process in terms of how to use those funds for transit.
Thanks. Maybe we could use it for county commissioner computers.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Let's see.
Thank you.
Item 8B, City Colorado Springs monthly change order.
This is Mike Chavez. This is an informational item. Is there any questions on this?
Any questions for Mike? Hearing none. Item 8C, El Paso County monthly change order. Jen?
Thanks. I had to unmute. This is a change order for some additional geotechnical work out at our Meridian McLaughlin roundabout that's underway. We did anticipate high groundwater out there, but we were faced with a lot more than we thought. So we need some additional geotechnical work to determine the best solution out there. So that's what this is. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jen? Okay, hearing none. Takes us to item 9, A, legislative report.
Hi, this is Dan Jablin. Just the primaries are done. The generals, of course, have started. I'm in the process now I'll be able to give a full report in about a month or so of interviewing all the candidates in the general elections. Right now I'm working with Chamber, and we're doing a meeting with about 8 candidates a day for the next 3 days. And we'll get virtually all of the candidates interviewed one way or the other between now and the next 90-day period. Attending several fundraisers through Zoom, actually doing a few fundraisers on the outside, so we can talk about candidates and what the makeup is going to be. IGs did play in all 8 of the primaries, and we were 8 for 8, I'm happy to say, so that's always a good step moving forward. And all 8 of the people that won the primaries will win the general in those elections. So now it's just a matter of getting busy and getting everybody interviewed and making the right decisions moving forward. Questions?
Any questions for Dan? Who was that? Thought I had heard somebody. Okay, it sounds like we don't have anything else. Okay, thank you very much. 9B, we have the staff field report.
This is my quarterly report from my drive around and visual confirmation of what's been accomplished. Be glad to take any questions.
Okay, any questions for Rick?
Thank you. It's information only.
Okay, and then I guess that takes us to 9C, the big PPRTA3 workshop. So who's leading this today?
Mr. Chair, this is Rick. I think I'll kick it off and then give it to you and then on to all the board members. We're a little over midway through the 10-year cycle of PPRTA2, and it's time to start looking towards PPRTA3, which would start January 1st of 2025. PPRTA staff and a few key staff members from city and county have met several times in the last few months and developed an initial list that's attached in the packet of issues and topics that the board might want to discuss. No pride of authorship. We're expecting that this is going to involve many meetings over the next 12 months. It would be good to try to finalize this in the next 12 months so that the member governments and their staffs can have some guidance on how they develop their capital project lists for PPRTA3, and also to know which year that the board tentatively decides it wants to go out on a ballot measure back to the voters for an extension of the capital program. So with that, I will step aside and Mr. Chair, back to you if you want to kick off the discussion or invite comments.
Okay, let's, do you have the discussion points on the, yeah, there we go. Thank you. I'm trying to slide down to my computer as well. Okay, so a lot of the things that we had talked about several months ago, but I think others have been providing ideas are, you know, different areas here. The funds themselves should be any expansion, revising, I think the pies or anything like that, prioritization, grant matching funds, how's that going to affect what we do? I think that one was one of the things that if you look in 3C, one of the things that came up was, do we just want an A list? Do we want a B list? Do we want to keep the A list smaller so we can get to the B list? And one of the things that popped up was like, well, what if you're on a B list, but you get a grant, matching grant? I think that was a good idea as a trigger to then let that become an A item. Because you had the matching grant for it, which would help it, you know, make it cheaper for us if we were able to do that. So different things we want to talk about, and then which year, 22 or 24. But I think a lot of this ideas that had popped up before, are we going to try to keep it the same as we're doing now, but just revise the the projects? I mean, just a different list of projects. Are we going to add in any municipalities that there's been discussion and that was already brought up earlier? And then also, you know, do we change the way the pie is separated in terms of not by municipalities, but by maintenance and capital, et cetera, you know, different ideas like that. So I'm open to any ideas, and we've got, you know, a year to do this. But I think the only really thing I had brought up as an issue or an idea was I did think it was a good idea if we do an A and B list, that if we do get a matching grant, that we have some leverage in there or flexibility to allow it to be elevated so that then we have the matching grant, make it cheaper for whichever entity is going to pay for that. But with that, I'll take any comments or questions from any of the members.
This is Commissioner Williams.
Go ahead.
So actually, I know I don't know if you want to go in these in order, but on the additional members, if we were to consider additional members such as Monument, Palmer Lake, Fountain, or even expanded up to include Teller County, how would they come in as they'd come in the past? Because I know that that's been Monument's hesitancy in coming in, is they wouldn't have enough money to start with. That's just open for general discussion, so.
This is Rick. Let me take a stab at that. The current IGA states that if a member government comes in the middle of a 10-year cycle, that they only get maintenance funds and not capital. But that's probably not answering your question here. Your question is probably regarding coming in in 2025. So that would just be a normal addition of a member government, and Jennifer Ivey can probably walk us through the basic steps of that. But it's just like RAMA joined, they came to the PPRTA in 2008, asked for pre-permission if they would go to their voters and get approval. Would the PPRTA board accept them? And the PPRTA board said yes. So then RAMA went to its voters. The voters gave it a thumbs up. So then they did join subsequent to their November 2008 ballot, and so they joined January 1st of 2009. And there's some procedural steps that are formalities, but that's basically what can happen and did happen with RAMA. So it would be the same with any other new municipality or county. Jennifer, did you want to modify that at all?
No, I mean, I could go on for an hour with what all those procedural steps are, but I mean, that is the gist of it. I mean, there is a logistical question, I guess, of when they would join, but I was just sort of thinking that through in my head. I think they could join as part of the same election cycle, and their voters would just be asked whether they could join and whether it could be extended. But that's just a legal nuance for people to think of, for me and other lawyers to think about as part of the process.
Okay, yeah, and I think the comment from Monument was, now that rooftops are producing sales tax because of the collection of out-of-state sales tax by the state, they really miss these conservative commissioners who closed down the Baptist Road RTA. They really missed that extra 0.50% they were getting from that. And so they're more likely to think about joining or doing their own between Monument and Palmer Lake. So that was the reason for my question.
Hey, I think Wayne has some comments.
I do. Thanks, Lahinas. Let me talk about a couple of these that I feel strongly about, and then, so I'm not going to take them in order. Let me start with number 4. The way the RTA is structured, we have various reserves and we have various plans that take place. I strongly believe it needs to be in 2022 and not 2024. And there are several reasons for that. First, if you waited till 2024, that means that 2024 budget has to be planned as if the RTA is shutting down, meaning that you're using up reserves, you're not, and you're not planning ahead for any of the issues because you don't know if it's going to pass. And so you're not able to begin that work on capital issues and other things. So, plus, there is no guarantee that voters will always vote in favor. It's one of the things that this entity is designed to do, is to go back to the voters with new lists. And so I very strongly believe we need to do it in 2022. So if we get something wrong, if the voters say no, then we can tweak what we're doing and have an opportunity to go back before it expires in its entirety. So that's my issue on number 4. With respect to number 5, I was open to adding RAMA. We extended the invitation to everybody at the time we created the RTA. But I think one of the things, you know, when you look at member representation, the initial concept was that while the 2 that represent most of the people would have most of the representatives, if we add 1 or more smaller communities, they would then have more votes collectively than all of El Paso County or all of Colorado Springs. So if we do add additional ones, we would, I think, want to change the number of representatives from the larger entities so that the smaller entities don't outnumber either of the larger. So continuing on, at least with number 6, improved cost estimates for capital projects. This is an area that we need to do significantly better in RTA 3. RTA 1 was pretty well done, in part because we had this huge backlog of things that had been planned. It's one of the reasons that I've been a little frustrated at times with RTA 2, because our estimates were not very good. And I'm not picking on any particular entity. The cities had projects that have been, I think, about 4 times budget with respect to Academy and Cottonwood Creek. The counties had projects it's managed that have been millions over, like Colorado. And so each of us, I think, need to do better, which is one of the reasons why I've pushed to have use some of those administrative dollars, as is contemplated in our revised budget, to get better estimates, because it's really hard to project a list if you don't know how much the list is going to cost. And so I think that's one area that we can and should do better. So that then leads to the beginning of the discussion on number 1, and in program funds. You know, I think having member governments have the flexibility to address, you know, the cities, for example, bridge replacement. We don't know exactly what bridge is going to have an issue. We've got some that we know, but we don't have all of them. And so I think it does make sense for member governments to put some funds in that. But I do believe we still need to have a list of projects we're going to do. Because if a voter looks at it and then it's just a trust me, we'll spend the money well, that's a different ask than trust us, these are the things we are going to do. And you look at the city's success recently with the 2C renewal. Again, there's a massive list of roads that were on that. And so I think, I do think we still need to have named capital projects. I think it's appropriate to have some program capital projects if that's what an entity wants. We need to, in creating this budget, set some parameters as to how those work. And so that's kind of a little bit of 1 and also 3. But since I kind of started into 3 with the A list versus B list, I do think it makes sense to say these are things we will choose from if we're going to get to B. I think we may want to define it in a way that we are more assured, and this goes back to the cost estimates being better, that we will get to some B projects to give us the flexibility. We may, though, want to look at a structured way, instead of having to wait for every A list to be done, to be able to have some flexibility to move B list projects up. And whether it's a grant program that comes in, whether it's a developer who says, I will bond and build this now, I think we want a little bit of flexibility to address some of those needs. And then the last thing I'll say, which isn't specifically on there, and I'm sorry to go on for a while, I think we need to look at regional projects and be a little more open than RTA 2 was. By way of background, RTA 1 included some CDOT projects within it. It included buying right-of-way for Powers Boulevard. It included improvements at Bijou and I-25. And so there were some companion projects there. Given the way CDOT is allocating funds these days, having a A-list project or some category, whether it's separate, hybrid, or something that says we're setting aside this much money to use to build a companion project or to provide matching funds for the feds or the state, I think would give our region some flexibility. You know, the gap, we wound up going with a separate vote to the people. But when we look at some of the issues on Powers Boulevard, on 24 West, on some other areas, I think having, writing in some flexibility to be able to use a certain portion of the money to make that project work. For those who've been there for a while, I mean, the Cimarron I-25 interchange, I don't know, had maybe 10 different funding sources with a little bit from this fund and a little bit from that fund. And we will be losing CMAQ funds, which are one of those categories we've used because of our air quality, which has been in excess of the quality standards. And because we've been so good for so long, we are losing CMAQ funds according to CDOT. So that really flexible source of funds we had is going away. So I think that's one topic of discussion that I think is worthwhile for regional matters. So those are some initial comments for me. Thanks.
Okay, Councilmember Geislinger.
Thanks, Lahinos. I agree with almost everything. I can almost say I agree with everything that Councilmember Williams said, with a few nuanced changes.
David, you're not coming in clear.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll get closer to the computer. I agree with everything that Wayne said. I think that it's really important for the reasons he said that we shoot for 2022. I'm going to just add on to some of the things, though, the concerns, the opportunities, and the challenges that are presented by the reality that we are now a much larger county, a much larger city in Colorado, and we are going to continue to grow, and that's going to increase a lot of the opportunities and challenges in transportation as we go forward. During the lunch preparation meeting, I asked Rick as we go forward, and he said that he could prepare like a regional map to show the major transportation corridors in our community, and within that map, it would include those jurisdictions that are part of PPRTA now, those jurisdictions that are not part of PPRTA. And I would hope that we would be able to have a kind of regional workshop, kind of along the lines of what we're doing at Colorado Springs Utilities with water regionalization, to recognize the interdependence that we have with transportation. One of the things that I think we're looking forward that's going to happen is that Highway 24 is going to become an increasing avenue for people on the Front Range to get to the ski areas, to get to the mountain areas, not only because of the growth in population in our region, but because of the growth in bottleneck on westbound and eastbound I-70 up north. And so as we look forward to this, I would really make a push. Oh, and the other thing is, of course, out to Schriever, Space Command, and going east, again, has really major benefits for the jurisdictions that are part of our region that are not part of the RTA. And so I think we have to make an appeal to these jurisdictions to say this is something that will benefit all of us and it will benefit them. That's going to raise then the question that Wayne brought up about, okay, what does member representation look like? So we're going to have to discuss the IGA with regard to that. How do we honor each of these smaller jurisdictions and the need for these, shouldn't say smaller jurisdictions, how do we honor each of the individual jurisdictions and the need for the individual jurisdictions to make the choices that are necessary within the jurisdictions, and at the same time addressing these broader regional transportation issues. And so Andy Gunning at lunch said, you know, it may be a good idea to have a presentation at PPACG, and then we can look at how big do we want this to be, what kind of geographical area do we want this to encompass. All of those decisions, I think, need to be addressed and looked at, and to see if we do have buy-in from these other jurisdictions, and hopefully get that done by the end of 2021, maybe even earlier, and then have a discussion of what the IGA looks like because of that, so that then going forward at the end of 2022, we can have a more, you know, a better sense of a more complete regional transportation approach. So I would add, I guess, taking all of that, add a 0.7 of let's take a look at regional transportation issues, which really I think is going to impact all these other things in terms of cost estimates. How are the members going to be represented? What does the CAC look like? and things along those lines. I also think as part of that, we ought to consider multi-jurisdictional, how are we going to regulate issues where there's multi-jurisdictional projects that are all entailing, who's going to manage it, how are we going to manage it, things like that. That's all I have to say. Sorry to emphasize the all.
Okay, anybody else have comments?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add a point to that as well. This is Andy Gunning, to what Wayne were just talking about. We were talking at the pre-meeting about just how critical the PPRTA component is to our regional transportation. So just putting a finer point on that, I mean, we generate about $100 million a year for, you all know this already, but for road projects, maintenance, and transit. And you take that out of the equation, and I don't know where we would be as a region. We get about $8 million a year, roughly, in federal transportation money that flows through CDOT, comes back to the region that we program through the TIP. Wayne mentioned that the CMAQ congestion management air quality money is going away after this year because we're meeting the air quality standards. And then we work with CDOT to help them program their funds throughout our broader region too, which we're part of with our MPO and COG region as well. But the other money that goes into transportation, it's state gas tax and federal gas tax. And those two haven't changed since 1992 and 1993 respectively. And without the PPRTA investment that we've had, I can't imagine where we'd be. So that has opened up so many other doors as far as leveraging for grants that we've gone after, the build grant that we saw CDOT and the county work toward to be successful with. That's improving these projects around our military installations, wouldn't have been possible without the PPRTA contribution. And obviously you all have mentioned the I-25 GAP project and Cimarron already. That's our future going forward. If we're going to be successful as a region with all the growth that we're seeing and being able to compete for federal grants and other state monies, we got to have some serious skin in the game and be a self-help community. So yeah, just glad to hear the conversation. And if there is a role where PPACG jurisdictions, if we need to put them together and have a special workshop or something like that, we'd be happy to help facilitate and set that up. Because we've been on the PPACG side, my transportation director, John Leo Sados, has been tracking, transportation funding and what that means as far as our long range plan that we put together through PPACG earlier this year, and looking at the shortfalls that we're seeing. So we're tracking what's happening as far as the federal money and the state money as well. So just wanted to put that out there.
Commissioner Williams, I have another comment.
Okay.
The bill that was in front of the state legislature that we were trying to make sure we got language in, that one kind of died because of the COVID situation. Am I correct on that? Yes. Okay. All right. That was my question. The program funds, yeah, I'm thinking we're going to have to be careful on how we define them. I don't mind, expanding them to other member governments. We're going to have to probably maybe be very careful with how we're defining them. I like the emergency bridge fund. I like the flexibility the city of Colorado Springs has had with those funds, but they might get hit on some of the road dieting, just to be honest, in our discussion. And so we need to figure out a way to maybe define those more clearly. That was my other comment. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Holly. Who else has comments or ideas? Okay, I don't really hear any.
Just one comment. I guess I think this has been a good discussion about things that we need to do. I don't have an idea about this, but I think it's something that needs to stay on our radar. So what do we want to do next to keep this on the radar? Do we want to have a monthly update from Rick about what we're doing, what needs to be done? I'm just a little concerned that we've had the discussion, but we don't have any clarity about what the next step is.
Okay, does Rick or Andy want to talk about that? I know this was supposed to be more of a quarterly update, so you're saying you want some Monthly update?
Well, I'm just curious what the next step is. I don't think we've defined a next step. I think we just generally had a discussion. So I'd ask Rick and maybe Andy about what do they see happening? When do they want to come back? How do they see, what's the timeline going forward?
I think the next step is to have a vote today by the board to refer it to the CAC and let the CAC start chewing on this list and make recommendations and then bring it back to the board in the August cycle. At that point, I think you can then decide if you want it back to the CAC and then back and forth between CAC and board on a monthly, every other month, quarterly. But I think that the next step would be a vote to refer it to the CAC. And then I had two comments when it's appropriate.
Okay, let Wayne chime in here first, and then we'll go back to you, Rick.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple of those that we ought to be able to resolve reasonably quickly, and it's important to resolve quickly which year we're planning on going to the ballot. So that one we might want to advance on a different decision track because it certainly shapes the speed with which others need to be developed. Do we need actually, Rick, a vote to get CAC's input? Because I think getting CAC's input on all of these would be important. And frankly, from the member governments as well.
Yes, your choice. I think my recommendation is that this next go to the CAC and then back to the board, at least to get a step 2 and a step 3 in this process.
So this is Mark. So to Wayne's earlier point, though, I agree with him that we probably need to be thinking about this a little bit differently than we have in the past. So what's the kind of mechanism to get that understanding to the CAC as they turn it over? I mean, my concern and my fear is that, they're going to, kind of rack and stack an A and B list and call it good and go from there. I think they need to have a little bit more of a clear guidance and understanding on, what this board's thinking about doing with it, which is different than what we've done in the past.
May I chime in on that, please?
Hey, Jim.
I agree with Commissioner Waller, and I was going to ask the question. I think the CAC does have some opinions based on previous discussions over the years about some of these. And because we get into the details on a lot of the things that are on this list, I think the board could benefit from some input from that. But I think it would also be beneficial by me taking it back to the CAC, that we either have a summary of some of you guys' comments and some guidance. And I mean, we can have a discussion on each one of these and give you our opinion, which we can go this iterative process and mash those around. But I think to Commissioner Waller's point, having some general guidance and what your expectations are would be beneficial to help guide the discussion a little bit with the CAC.
And this is Commissioner Williams.
Hey, Holly.
Thank you. Okay, I think for sure we want to go to the ballot in 2022. I can say that if we had a vote on that today, I would say yes, that's the year we want to go. The other thing is, I do think that as the CAC tries to go through some of these definitions of program funds. We didn't even put on here the maintenance definition. Maybe that was purposeful of what year is the base maintenance year for our member entities. But I do think it's important for the county engineer and the city engineering department to chime in on what projects they think are the most important first. And so not really to have the CAC decide what streets and stuff first, but have the engineers recommend to the CAC, this is where we're seeing the growth, this is what needs to be done. Is that how it was done in the past?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and again, this is Mark. I think we need to figure out that, you know, if we're going to make some changes to create flexibility, which again, I think is a wonderful idea, there needs to be, I think, some sort of framework for that to send to the CAC as well.
Well, for instance,
maybe that falls on Jennifer Ivey to, you know, kind of figure out what that looks like.
For instance, when if you change the process from which, if you get a grant, you can move a list from B to A, the current ballot language, if I'm not mistaken, says that you have to have all A stuff done first, or funded first, I guess. So if you're going to put into flexibility, and I agree with the point, if you have the flexibility to move a B list item to the A list problem because of a contractor or a grant or something, we've got to change the language in what the voters approved in order to do that. It's more than just an IGA, and that's just my opinion. Jennifer can weigh in on that.
Yeah, and that, I mean, you're right. It is a change to the ballot language paradigm that we've used, but that's not hard to draft. I mean, we can draft any number of exceptions or, you know, criteria into the ballot. It's just at some point it becomes superbly confusing for the voters. But, you know, we could definitely draft in a, you know, by supermajority vote, things could be moved from the B to the A list and the voters approve that. Or in the event that, you know, full funding for a B list item only, you know, I can think of several different scenarios that we could sort of draft into a ballot question and get voter approval for them.
Yeah, or maybe there's a way to think about creating some sort of, you know, generic flexibility in it that kind of covers what Wayne was talking about, covers what Lohinos was talking about. I don't know, but I mean, obviously the more flexibility you build into it, the more difficult it becomes to pass, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most flexible approach would be some sort of a super majority vote of the PPRTA board or something like that, you know, so it's not just an everyday occurrence, but, you know, when there's a truly extenuating circumstance which would make the board want to move a B list item up ahead of an A list item, that they have some flexibility to do so. That's the first thing that pops into my head, just spitballing here today.
Well, and this go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, the more flexibility you add, the more attention you have to play to transparency and accountability.
The other thing I'd say is it's as long as you're not taking away an A list, I don't think it raises quite as much concern with moving a B list up. It would be, and so I think one of the ideas would be, you know, maybe it's at 50% or 60% as A, and then you've got some flexibility to move a B list project up. But that then still guarantees to the voter that you're still going to do those A list projects. So that might be a way to address it as well.
And I have, oh, go ahead.
Okay, what I was going to add here was just, you know, before more people start chiming in, I think on 3 and 4, it does sound like there's maybe some consensus of what we want to do moving forward today is that we want to look at the 2022 and then on the number 3, because we can throw out 100 ideas here right now, but it looks like we want to have a list, but have ideas to talk about on how you can make that flexibility happen between moving a B list up to an A list. So we'll want that addressed. I don't know if we want to continue bringing up 5 or 10 different ideas here, but it looks like we absolutely want that as one of our ideas moving forward for item 3. So who was about to comment in? Was that David?
Well, I had to comment too. My comment is before we have the CAC discuss adding other entities such as Palmer Lake or Monument. Let me talk with Rick about that and Lohinos and Mark specifically, just, you know, to bounce some ideas around and see, because that does change the makeup of the committee. We'd have to figure out how we were going to handle the votes, and if you go into thirds of votes or stuff like that. So let's not put that one on the CAC yet, but see, you know, if we want to think about it and come back next month to talk about it again, or in a couple of months.
Okay, Councilmember Geislinger.
Thank you, Commissioner. I guess I would disagree with you on that, Holly, and I think that that's still something that the people within the PPRTA now need to discuss with one another. But as I see things going forward, I think we're all in agreement that 2022, or it sounds like there's no disagreement that 2022 is the date we want to shoot for. And so when this gets to the CAC, that is something that I think, you know, is written in stone. Let's shoot for 2022. I'd be a little reluctant to put too many edges right now on what the CAC would want to consider and what the CAC may want to propose back to us. This has been a very open discussion about what the PPRTA3 should look like, what should be included, what should not be included. And because there are so many options out there, we're not able to come up with a defined scope of an option for CAC to consider at this point. And I think CAC, in its experience, may want to come back after addressing and having the same kind of open discussion amongst itself, and may want to come back and suggest something totally different to us. And it goes back to what Rick was saying, is there may be this back and forth for a little while between CAC and the board. After the next meeting, it may be a good idea to have a workshop with CAC and the PPRTA board together to come up with these agreements. So instead of us giving a more definite scope of an assignment to CAC, I'm comfortable saying the assignment should be talk about these topics, talk about what other topics CAC thinks need to be included, and to have more of an open-ended discussion at this juncture, so that we can focus kind of like a funnel to what we really do want to get down to when it comes time to get down to it. I don't think we have to get to that level yet.
Yeah, I guess, David, you've convinced me on that one. So, because usually CAC can send us some pretty interesting ideas, and they have a good active group there. So I will take back my comment and agree with Mr. Geislinger.
Yeah, and actually that's kind of what I was driving towards. Was I don't want the CAC to just think it's business as usual, and that, you know, 2022 we're gonna, you know, go forward and do things the way that we've always done them. My hope is they understand that this board wants to do things a little bit differently, and you know, think a little bit more creatively than maybe we've done in the past, and, you know, create more opportunities. And so I guess I'm not saying that, you know, hey, here's Wayne's ideas, turn them over and, you know, bring them back to us, but just more understand that this board is thinking more creatively and wants to be more cutting edge, and wants to come up with, you know, more flexible, better, creative solutions for, you know, to meet our transportation needs as we move forward.
Point taken, and we can make sure we pass that on to the CAC.
Anybody else? I don't see any more chats to me to be called on.
Lohinos, do we want a formal motion to refer it to the CAC, or are we comfortable with where we are?
Do you think you have guidance, Jim?
I would say, this is Dave, and I'm sorry, Jim, I didn't. I would make that motion because I think a formal motion adds some gravitas to what we just talked about and what Jim just recognized.
Second. This is Wayne, by the way, with the second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to send that to the CAC for ideas in genius making. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes unanimously.
Mr. Chair, this is Rick.
Yes, Rick.
If we could, while we have Jennifer Ivey available, when she was reviewing my list, she noted that the state RTA statute allows RTAs to go to the ballot at the November of any year. So I would ask her to share that with the board.
Yeah, I mean, Rick stated it. It's not a 22 or 24 question. It's a 22, 23, 24. I mean, we could go in 21, in fact, although that gets into a Tabor concern with too much of a delay. So to me, it's a 22, 23, or 24 question. It's not limited to even numbered years.
However, the clerk and recorder's fee goes up significantly, and maybe Councilmember Williams can share details about that. But I think staff-wise, we were looking at the even number year because it would either be a presidential year or congressional year, so that there would be more governmental partners sharing in the clerk and recorder ballot fee.
Yeah, usually, this is Jennifer, usually the more governments you have to defray the cost, the more affordable it is, which is why we decided when Rick and I talked about this just to leave 22 or 24 as the options, but good to point it out that 23 is an option if needed.
Okay.
This is Wayne Williams.
Wayne?
So the general elections, which are the ones in even numbered years, are more expensive to run, but you tend to have more people participating. So I'm not sure that it is cheaper. It may actually be slightly more expensive. However, I think the RTA has, the other two RTAs were both presidential years. There's a turnout difference. And I think given the broad-based mission of the RTA, a broader electorate is more appropriate. And so that's why I think we ought to go for 2022. I think if it doesn't pass in 2022, if the voters tell us there are issues with the proposal, that at that point, we ought to look at 2023 to try to fix those issues so we don't have the 2024 shutdown process. But I would go with the first priority of 2022.
Okay. I think that's it for that topic. Item 10, PPRTA member announcements. Do we have any member comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move in to 11. Says approved, so an adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Adjourn, Yolanda.
I will gladly second.
All right, so a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.